Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto's true family was the Uchiha clan, under Mikoto's care. Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Konohagakure no Sato. October 10th. Uzumaki Kushina, the Akai Chishio no Habanero, was known as many things not only throughout Konohagakure no Sato, the village she resided in, but throughout the elemental nations. To her enemies she was strong, dauntless, and unpredictable. To those that know her personally she was all those things, and much more. She was stubborn when fixated on a purpose, impulsive when swayed by her emotions, and quick to lash out if anyone angered her. Right now, however, she was a few things: very hungry, very bored, and very pregnant. I'm so bored and hungry, thought one Uzumaki Kushina as she sighed and rubbed her big belly. Kushina had been pregnant for the last 9 months, and was hoping that today would be the day she would finally give birth, and start her own family. She already knew what the baby would be as she had been given that information on one of her daily checkups. It was going to be a boy. She had been ecstatic when she had found out, and had to be restrained at the time from moving around so as to not unnecessarily injure herself or the baby. She had calmed down immediately when the threat of injury was brought up. She would not take any risks with Naruto. That was the name that had been decided upon by herself, and her husband. Uzumaki Naruto, that has a nice ring to it. Then again, so does Namikaze Naruto, she thought absent-minded, as she sounded out each name. Namikaze, that was a name that was synonymous with one person, the Yondaime Hokage, Namikaze Minato. While not many knew of it, the red-headed Uzumaki had indeed been in a secret relationship with the blonde Namikaze. They had met only briefly in their academy days, and had not had much interaction with one another. However, after Kushina had been kidnapped by Kumogakure, the blonde Namikaze had went, and had succeeded in his rescue. It was history after that. They had been engaged a few years after the Third Shinobi World War, Daisanji Ninkai Taisen, and had married only shortly after she had found out she was pregnant. Grumble. She had been brought out of her reminiscing moment by the gurgle of her stomach. Hee hee, whoops, guess I forgot I was hungry. Well, I guess I'm making a trip over to Ramen Ichiraku for some lunch, thought Kushina as she laughed at herself for forgetting. As she was making her way down the street towards her destination, she kept passing various amounts of businesses that were trying to sell their wares. None had really caught her attention as she was more focused on getting her stomach full until something caught her eye. She slowed her pace down enough to check out the store in question. It was a clothing store, but for babies. I'll just take a quick peek inside, thought the Uzumaki, as she entered the store. She entered the establishment and noticed that the place had a wide variety of different selections to choose from. She was just browsing through some clothes that were more to her liking as they were things she would wear if they made them a few sizes bigger. She was brought out of her scrummaging as she saw something dark out of the corner of her eye. She turned her head to see what it was and noticed it wasn't a what, but a who. It was her best friend, Uchiha Mikoto. Kushina had always had a friend-rival relationship with the woman as they had always competed with each other. She was her best friend, but she was also the person she wanted to beat the most. As it was, Mikoto was ahead of her as she already had 2 children while she was going for her first. Hey there Mikoto-chan, shouted Kushina, here buying some baby clothes for Sasuke-chan? Asked Kushina, as she made her way over to the woman. The Uchiha woman had been startled when she heard her name shouted at her in a store and was about to scold whoever had done it. When she turned around and saw the strands of fiery red hair she already knew who it was. It's nice to see you to Kushina-chan, replied Mikoto, and you shouldn't shout in a store as that is rude to the other patrons, scolded the Uchiha. Kushina blushed crimson as she realized what she had done, and was now trying to shrink away from the eyes now staring at her. Oops. Sorry about that, muttered Kushina embarrassed. It's fine Kushina, just be more aware of your surroundings and those that are in them, said the Uchiha, and yes, I am here to buy some more clothes for little Sasuke, she answered. While the two women were silently conversing with each other completely unaware of the few women who were staring at them both. They couldn't help but stare enviously at both women as they were considered two of the most beautiful women in the whole village. These two were the epitome of what the civilian and kunoichi were striving to be, beautiful but deadly. The Uchiha woman had fair skin with long black hair with bangs hanging on either side of her face to frame her cheeks along with her onyx eyes. She roughly stood at 5 feet 3 inches. The Uzumaki stood just a bit taller than her counterpart at 5 feet 4 inches with fair skin, but a slender yet feminine build. Violet eyes, and crimson red hair framed her face, giving her an exotic look that just personified her beauty. So what kind of clothes are you looking into? Asked Kushina. I don't really know, confessed Mikoto. I came to buy a few shirts for Sasuke, but I can't seem to make up my mind, said Mikoto, as she was torn between a blue shirt or a black one. Hee, you should be more organized like me, Mikoto-chan, said the redhead smugly. I already have baby clothes for Naru-chan all set up and ready to go, said Kushina with a confident smirk on her face, believing she had outdone her rival. Mikoto simply stared at her friend, and smiled at her ignorance and naive attitude. Kushina, let me give you a piece of advice from a mother who has experience in raising a child, said Mikoto. Newborn children are always going to need things in quantity, even when you believe you have enough, it isn't, explained Mikoto, as she broke the news to her friend. Quote. Oh, of course I knew that. I was just testing you to see if you knew that, replied a stuttering and embarrassed Kushina. Mikoto smiled softly at her friend's flustered state. So what are you in here to buy, Kushina-chan? Asked Mikoto. Well, I grumble. Her stomach gurgled yet again, clearly upset with not getting any food yet. Quote. Kushina looked absolutely mortified while Mikoto was chuckling awkwardly. Quiet you, thought Kushina, silencing her stomach and praying it did not happen again. Mumbled Mikoto. I was actually on my way to get some lunch before I stopped in here, would you care to join me? Quickly asked Kushina, as she wanted to leave the store so as to not attract any more attention. Lunch sounds great. Just give me a few seconds to buy these things, and then we'll head out, answered Mikoto, and went to buy her things. Both women were making their way over to the ramen stand, and were a few feet away when two boys of the same age had stopped in front of them. Kushina instantly recognized both boys as she used to take care of both of them when they were just a bit younger than what they are now. Uchiha Itachi and Uchiha Shisui, she remembered when she had sent over the boys' birthday presents for their 5th birthday. She couldn't make it that day because of a day at the doctor for her pregnancy. Good afternoon, Mikoto-sama, Kushina-sama, greeted the first boy with a goofy grin on his face. The other boy was shaking his head in exasperation at his friend's somewhat formal greeting. While still respectful, he did not believe it was enough. He lined up his feet, straightened his back, held up his chin looking them in the eye, and then bowed. Good afternoon, Kushina-sama, and to you as well, Ka-sama, said the still bowing boy. Kushina looked at both boys, and couldn't help but be amazed. They both hailed from the same clan, but they were both polar opposites of each other. Both had jet black hair, onyx eyes, and fair skin. That was where the comparisons stopped though. Itachi was growing a ponytail while the front of his hair was well kept and framed his face. Shisui on the other hand had short, unkempt hair, along with a broad nose and some rather well-defined eyelashes. "So what are the two of you doing out here?" asked Mikoto, since neither had given a reason as to why they were there. "We were actually looking for you and Sasuke," answered Itachi. "Yeah, we came looking for you so we could play with Sasuke-chan, right, Itachi?" asks Shisui looking at his friend. Itachi sighed while shaking his head when he heard the answer as to why they were really there. He could hear the snickering coming from the two women in front of him, and sighed even louder when his mother told him that Sasuke was at home with his father. He noticed that the redhead had stopped, controlled herself and took a knee in front of them. "Can I ask the both of you for a favor?" asks Kushina looking each both in their eyes. Both gave her a nod, and she continued. "You can both see that I'm going to have a baby, right?" She asks as both boys give her a nod. "I want you two to be big brothers to Naruto," she said. "I am afraid I don't follow," questioned Itachi, as Shisui also looked rather confused as well. "What I mean is for the both of you to look out for him, play with him when you can, beat up anyone who picks on him, like a big brother should. Naruto isn't going to be like Sasuke, who has you to watch over him, Itachi. So would you both do me this favor?" asked Kushina, explaining herself. Both boys were stunned speechless as they weren't expecting for her to ask them that. To be asked to be big brothers to another child, and one whose mother had looked after them or played with them when they were kids. They did not take long with their answers. "I would like that very much, Kushina-sama," replied Itachi with a smile on his lips. "Yosh. You can count on me as well, Kushina-sama. I'll be the best big brother to Naruto-chan in the whole village. I'll protect him till the day I die," shouted Shisui while grinning while Itachi nodded his head, for once agreeing with his friend. Kushina had been a bit taken aback with his last statement, but smiled warmly at the boys. "Thank you, Shisui-kun. Itachi-kun, I know I can count on the two of you," she said, and gave both boys a big warm hug. Both boys had returned the hug. They finally broke free from each other while helping Kushina get back on her feet, and said they would let both of them get on with their business. Both boys went back to the Uchiha compound. With both boys gone, the two ladies had resumed their walk once again. Mikoto noticed her friend squirming a bit as she walked, but said nothing about it. Mikoto-chan. Yes, she replied. What is it, Kushina-chan? Spit it out, yelled Mikoto, finally losing her patience. "Is it going to hurt when I give birth?" blurted out Kushina. Wah. Don't tell me that the Akai Chishio no Habanero is scared of childbirth. Especially when you've done the things you've done over the years. Teased the Uchiha. "Hey, I was just asking a question. Don't make fun of me and make me hit you, TT Bane," threatened Kushina while shaking her fist at her friend. Mikoto completely ignored her friend's outburst and casual threat. "Hurt? No, of course it's not going to hurt. Whatever gave you that idea?" sarcastically answered Mikoto. Kushina seemed to calm down a bit after hearing her friend's answer, as she trusted the woman next to her completely. Grumble. Well, we're only a few feet away from the ramen stand, stuttered Mikoto, caught off guard by the loud noise Kushina's stomach had made. Kushina did not even bother to reply, and continued to try and shrink herself into her clothes to hide away from the stares. It seemed her stomach was fed up, and wanted to eat now. Finally, after what seemed like hours, they had finally arrived at their destination. They both took a seat at the stand, and were waiting to be helped. Kushina. What are you hoping Naruto turns out like? Mikoto asked suddenly. Kushina hummed and answered, I want him to be like me, a badass. She responded. Mikoto shook her head, and refrained from asking any more questions as they were going to place their orders. Mikoto ordered 1 bowl of chicken ramen while Kushina ordered multiple bowls, 5 bowls of miso ramen, and 5 bowls of shio ramen. Both variants of ramen had things that would be suitable for a pregnant woman: chicken, vegetables, and fish. Their orders had arrived a few minutes later, and they ate in silence. Once they had both finished, they had each paid for their food and had left the stand. Both had things they had to take care of, so they were each saying goodbye to the other. Splash. Kushina's water had finally broken. Silence, pure and utter silence throughout the entire street they were on. Oh shit, were the thoughts of both women. Kushina was starting to get extremely nervous, and began to panic. She barely heard her friend telling her to calm down until she passed out. Mikoto saw her friend had barely heard her voice, and quickly reacted once she saw her friend falling face first into the ground. She managed to grab her in time. Konoha Hospital. Kushina had finally been admitted into the hospital, and had thoroughly freaked out when she didn't know where she was. She had calmed down somewhat when she saw the hospital personnel, but began to freak out again when it finally hit her. Oh my god. Oh my god. I can't believe I'm finally going to have this baby, thought Kushina, as her heart was beating faster and faster. She was brought out of her mini freakout when she heard footsteps directly outside of her room's door. The door opened, and 2 people walked in. She knew one person as they had interacted with each other in the past couple of weeks, but she didn't know too much about the other person. All she had was a name. Sarutobi Bawako, wife of Sarutobi Hiruzen the Sandaime Hokage, was one of the midwives that would help deliver the baby. The other was a woman named Taji, and all Kushina knew about the women was her name and occupation, Anbu. Wait a minute here. 1, 2, 2. Where the hell is she at? Thought Kushina with her anger starting to rise. The third midwife that was going to help was none other than Senju Tsunade. Hailed as the greatest medical nin of all time, a member of the Densetsu no Sanin, related to Senju Tobarama and Senju Hashirama, and she was incredibly late. Where the hell is Tsunade at? Shouted Kushina, losing her cool. We don't know. We sent teams out to locate her and deliver a message asking her to be here for this. She finally replied after a few weeks saying she would be here as a favor to you, Kushina, answered Bawako, explaining the situation with the missing Senju. Flashback. Tsunade-sama. Tsunade-sama. I have a letter from Konoha, said Shizune, the apprentice of Tsunade. Shizune was a fair-skinned woman with a slender build along with black eyes and hair. She hands her master the letter and was going to leave for a moment. The letter had only just reached the fingertips of Tsunade before it was sticking out of the trash. She was currently gambling and did not want to read anything that pertained to Konoha. Tsunade-sama, did you even read the letter? And what it pertained to? Questioned Shizune, hands on her hips. I didn't need to read it to know what it said or what they wanted, answered Tsunade in a monotone voice as she stood up to leave as she had lost most of her money. Senju Tsunade is a light-skinned woman, brown eyes, and straight blonde hair that reached her waist and framed her face with 2 shoulder-length bangs. She also had possibly the largest bust in the ninja world at 106 centimeters, and has been hailed as the most beautiful kunoichi in the world. Shizune shook her head in disappointment at her master's attitude, and proceeded to inform her of what the letter actually said. It was a request to help deliver the child of Uzumaki Kushina. That's it? Questioned Tsunade. Yes, that's it. At best, you'll be in the village for a couple of hours, and at worst a few days, answered Shizune. Tsunade thought about it for a while and accepted the request. She would be there to help with the childbirth, as a favor to her distant Uzumaki relative. It was decided, and they both prepared to travel back to Konoha. Flashback end. That was a little over 2 weeks ago when they had received the reply, but the women had yet to show up, and Kushina was beginning her contractions. Suddenly everyone felt a presence enter the room, and were immediately on guard. However, Kushina smiled when she saw the yellow flash, already knowing who it was. The man in front of them was a fairly tall, fair-skinned man with bright blue eyes, and blonde spiky hair with 2 bangs framing his face. It was none other than Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage. Dawdled Minato, I heard you passed out when your water broke. Minato said, grinning. Kushina glared, and let out a growl at the man who was the father of her child. She could see him grinning like a madman, and was about to get up and stick her foot up his, but was stopped. As much as I would love to see you rip him a new one, don't you believe we should get things underway? Stated Bawako as she stood in the middle of the two. And what of Tsunade? Questioned Minato. She has yet to arrive. So we will have to start without her. Said Bawako as she heaved a sigh. Well, not much we can do about her now. Grab a hold of me, and we can get started at our new location. Said Minato, as they were moving to a different location in order for Kushina to give birth. The reason for this was because of the Biju sealed within Kushina, or more specifically the Kyubi no Yoko. The seal placed on her would be weakest during childbirth, as the energy needed to be redirected into something other than the child, and so as to not alert the villagers they were doing the delivery in a secret area that would mask any leaked chakra from the Biju. Chamber of sealing. Ah! Screamed one Uzumaki Kushina. Remember your breathing exercises, and keep pushing. You're almost there, Kushina-sama. Spoke Taji, trying to calm the patient. I know that. I swear. That if I see Minato's face. I'm going to pound it in for what? He's putting me through. Minato had been kicked out of the room because he had been freaking out, and had started pace back and forth. Plus he needed to keep an eye on the seal holding the Biju in. To hell with getting his face pounded in, he would be there for the birth of his son. It was one thing to pump himself up, but another thing entirely, as he was not even in the room yet. He opened the door to the room with the presence of a hardened warrior, and immediately withered under his wife's demonic glare. He was no censor, but he could still feel an assortment of emotions rolling off of her. They were all directed at his person, and they mostly consisted of bodily harm. Now Kushina, I'm sure it isn't that bad. Very poor choice of words. What did you just say? Asked Kushina in the calmest tone she had before the birthing had begun. I said, I know what you said, you idiot. You have some nerve saying that to me when you don't even know the pain I'm in. Damn you Namikaze Minato, for what you're putting me through. He had no answer to her claims. He did not know the pain she was going though, he had assumed it hadn't hurt that much, but to damn him, wasn't that a bit much? I knew I should have created a seal to counteract the pain. The drugs the doctors gave me aren't enough. I was just so happy about having a family that I forgot to create it. Quote. He still didn't understand how any of this was fault. He may have been the one to knock her up, but that shouldn't have distracted her from making it. He was too busy with his own work to make one, so yep, it was definitely not his fault. Don't give me that look. And keep those thoughts to yourself. What in the name of Uchiha Madara, how had she known what he was thinking? Must be a latent ability of a pregnant woman. To be able to discern their husband's thoughts. Minato, are you even listening to, me? Quote. Yes. I swear, if you were thinking, something idiotic about me, threatened Kushina with a balled-up fist shaking at her husband. No Kushi-chan, I wasn't thinking that at all. My god, what willpower this woman had. To give birth while berating and threatening him, that definitely had to be an Uzumaki thing. It felt like they had been speaking for hours, yet she had still not given birth. You're doing it. Again aren't you? Quote. Manatu 0000000. And there it was. With that scream alone, they all knew that the baby would be coming any second now. Bawako kept telling her to push and push, to give it everything she had and then some. Her breathing had become heavier, and she was now taking a few seconds in between each breath. Minato had seen some stuff in his life, but this took the prize. What he had witnessed was a miracle given life. And that's when he heard it, the best sound he had ever heard in his life. Waaahhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhh himself shedding his own tears, he was now a father. Shish shish, said Taji soothingly, trying to calm the baby down. Congratulations Kushina-sama, Minato-sama. You have a healthy baby boy. Once both parents saw him, all they felt was love. Naruto, their son, had inherited the majority of Minato's blonde hair, but when they looked closer they could see little red wisps. He had also inherited his father's strikingly blue eyes. However, he looked more like his mother more than anything. Taji then proceeded to give the baby to his mother. As if Naruto knew he was in loving hands, he stopped his crying, and looked up at his mother with his blue eyes, and gurgled. My baby, my precious baby boy, repeated Kushina as she was gently holding him in her arms. May I hold him Kushina? Asked Minato. She actually seemed to think on it, and had wanted to outright refuse him, but had relented. Of course, but be careful with him. Support his head gently, instructed Kushina, as this information had been drilled into her by Bawako. Hey there little guy, I'm your daddy, softly spoke Minato. He got a little baby yawn, it was just the most adorable thing he had ever seen. Excuse me Minato-sama, but may I have baby Naruto back for a few seconds? I need to measure his height and weight for his birth certificate, spoke Taji. Oh, right, here you go, said Minato, handing over his son. Thanks, I'll be done in a few seconds. Squelch. Waahhhh, cried baby Naruto, as someone different was holding him. Both parents shot their heads to the sounds of their child, and the familiar sound of blood hitting the ground. They both froze at what they saw, a masked man holding their son with a kunai pointed at his neck along with two bodies behind the man. Taji and Bawako were dead. Minato made to move, and beat the man with his superior speed, but the man threatened to kill the child before he could reach him. Then it happened. It all happened with the span of a few seconds. One moment, Minato was standing next to his wife, but now he was holding his child in his hands. He quickly noticed the exploding tags attached to his son's blanket, took it off, and flashed away to his home to secure his son. He had left his wife alone. Kushina. She was trying her hardest not to get teary-eyed as her son had been taken away, but her anger took over for her, and was directed at the masked man. What do you want? She yelled, trying to sound intimidating. To destroy Konoha. What? Why? How? Do you plan on doing that? Kushina said in between breaths after the birth. Simple really. I'm going to rip the Kyuubi from your gut, and release him upon the village, thus destroying it. Now Kushina was a bit frightened, and was about to speak before the man placed his hand on the seal that was on her belly. No. Wai. Ah. The seal had pulsed for a brief second before a primal roar pierced the heavens, and shook the very earth itself. Roar. The Kyubi no Yoko had been released from its seal, and placed under the control of the masked man. You've done your part, Uzumaki Kushina, now watch as I burn Konoha to the ground, said the masked man, and he disappeared. He assumed the woman was going to die of blood loss and shock from having the biju forcibly extracted. A few seconds later Minato reappeared. Ina! Kushina! Yelled Minato as he re-entered the sealing chamber. Minato had arrived only to see wife breathing coming out heavy and hoarse. She was still alive and that's all that mattered right now. He noticed the man from before was gone, and was going to soon give chase as he already knew what was going on. The biju had been released from its seal, as he could feel its foul chakra. He needed to hurry before the biju reached the village. He already knew what he was going to do, but he would ensure that they would never be alone in this world. He lightly touched his wife and disappeared in a yellow flash. Minato's secret house. Minato and Kushina had arrived at his secret safe house, located just behind the Hokage mountain. He placed his wife in a bed. Knowing her, she's going to try and get up and fight with me, thought Minato with a sad smile. That is not something I can allow to happen. One of us needs to guide our son, and that will be you, Kushina. Fuinjutsu. Ikaime Keke, sealing technique. Living barrier. He placed a few seals around her bed and sealed her within a barrier that was tied to his chakra, so when his ran out, then it would run out. He looked at his wife one last time, and left to deal with the threat to his family and home. Kushina. Gasp. Kushina awoke with a gasp for air, and settled back down on her bed. She quickly took in a breath of air and calmed herself down. She opened her eyes, and was now confused as she did not recognize the place she had been placed in at first. She realized that she was in Minato's home when not staying in the Uzumaki compound. She tenderly got up out of the bed, and searched around the home. Finding nothing of importance, she ventured towards the door, and opened it to find herself outside. She looked around, and noticed that many things had been destroyed along with trees being uprooted all around the area. She suddenly froze as she saw something that is going to haunt her for the rest of her life. Lying there on the floor just a few feet away from her was her husband with a gaping hole in the middle of his body. She saw this, and despite the pain she was feeling, she rushed over to his downed form. She reached him, and began to shake him while tears were falling down her face. She tried and tried, but realization hit her. Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage, was dead. As she was crying, she managed to hear a very faint sound off in the distance, so she got herself up, and found her son in a basket crying. Her son was alive. She quickly grabbed him, and started to cry along with him until she saw the seal that had faded from his little belly. Then everything hit her. She knew just what had happened. Her husband had sealed the biju inside of their son. That was why he was dead, as she knew he only knew of one way to seal the kyubi. He had used the Shiki Fujin along with the Hake no Fuin Shiki. She looked at her son, and knew things would be difficult if news ever got out that he was the new Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Yoko, and she assumed that was why she was alive, so as to not only protect him, but guide him as well. She then noticed two concealed letters, one for herself and Naruto, but before she could hope to read hers, someone called out to her. She turned expecting one person, but was surprised when there were two. Sarutobi Hiruzen was striding over to her location while one of his students trailed him. She would have thought it to be Jiraiya, but instead it was Senju Tsunade. Finally getting over her mild surprise, she questioned why both teacher and student had arrived after the damage had finally been done. She heard their answers, but neither appeased her and she began to recount just what she could remember of the situation at their behest. Listen, Kushina, I'm sorry for the loss of your husband, but I need to know what happened to the Biju. Pressed Hiruzen, as he needed to know the situation in case it was still loose. Kushina did not hesitate for 1 second before answering, it was sealed by Minato. He sealed it inside of himself and took it with him into the belly of the Shinigami, lied Kushina. Both were surprised, but none more than Hiruzen. He looked into the woman's eyes to see if he could find any deceit, but found none. He then looked to the child in her arms and saw nothing. No seal anywhere on the body nor were there any traces of the Biju's influence. I see, said Hiruzen, sighing at the whole situation. What do you plan to do now? He asked. I plan on raising my son to the best of my ability while leading him to greatness, stated Kushina with a conviction in her voice. Hiruzen nodded at the women, and then asked her another question. What's the lad's name? He questioned. Kushina easily read between the lines, his name is Uzumaki Naruto of the Uzumaki clan. I see. Will he ever take his father's name? Perhaps. I will let him decide when he's older or if he finds out himself. Whichever comes first, answered Kushina, as she was now starting to feel the effects of the pain on her body. Listen, Hiruzen, I'm taking my son home. We need to rest after the ordeal we have been put through today. If you need any more questions answered, then you may ask me tomorrow, said Kushina, before gripping her child a bit tighter, and began walking back to her home. She stopped halfway. Tsunade asked Kushina in a tired voice. Yes. Can I talk to you? Come by the house tomorrow. I have something I need to ask you. Just ask me now. I might only be in the village until tomorrow anyway, replied Tsunade, as she did not wish to see more blood and carnage. Kushina stared at the women, and was trying to figure out if she was being serious or not. Would she really just leave when so many were injured and in need of her skills? Walk with me then. Okay, she said as she caught up with the redhead, so what did you want to ask me? I wanted to know if you were interested in becoming our family's personal doctor. She asks suddenly. Why would I want to do that? I mean, don't get me wrong. I consider you family regardless of how distant, but why would I want to stay in this village? Questioned Tsunade, surprised at the out of the blue offer. Well, you do kind of owe me for not being here on time. And had you been here, things might have been different, reasoned Kushina, while trying to guilt her into staying. Look, I'm sorry for your loss, but this village has taken too much from me, and I just can't stay here, answered Tsunade as truthfully as she could. Look, I don't care if you want to leave the village to go and do your own thing, but when I have need for you, I want you to be there. I will offer you and your apprentice a place to live while paying you for your services. How does that sound? Quote. Tsunade bit her lip as she was seriously considering the offer. It would be nice for herself and her apprentice to finally settle down for a bit. Plus she could still leave and do her own thing or when she just didn't want to be in the village for a while. Deal, said Tsunade, reaching to shake on it. Deal, replied Kushina, doing the same thing, and shook hands. They both walked back to the Uzumaki compound awaiting what was to come in the following years. 3 years later. 3 years had come and gone since that fateful day 3 years ago. The village itself had undergone some changes since that day. New buildings had been built for the ones that had been destroyed, new procedures had been put in place in case of another disaster, and the naming of a Hokage. Kushina remembered that day very well as she had been in the populace when it had been announced that Hiruzen Sarutobi would resume his duties as Hokage once more. She heard his explanation on just what had transpired that night, and how the Yondaime had sealed the beast within himself and taken it with him to the grave. She of course took in all of the reactions the populace had, and most seemed to buy it, so that was at least one thing she did not have to worry about. Nobody would suspect her son, nor would she let them. She had read the letter that had been addressed to herself all those years ago, and it gave her more information on just what had really happened. She had only known bits and pieces, but now she knew it all. Her husband had fought a man who he believed to be the legendary Uchiha Madara, as the man had shown he had a fully matured Sharingan. She had read on, and found out that he had only sealed half of the Biju into her son. He sealed the yin half of the fox into Naruto while sealing the yang in himself. He had also instructed her to begin his training as soon as she could, as there will be enemies who will seek to use or take the Biju from him, or in fact use him as a weapon. She had also taken up a seat on the council as head of the Uzumaki clan. She would need information on just what the most powerful people in the village were planning. However, she would only take up that mantle until Naruto was old enough to look after himself. Speaking of her son, she had to say that she was honestly surprised by her son. He was quiet most of the time and chose to focus his thinking on certain things. Granted, he was just 3 years old, but it was still quite something to see. He was always reading, and trying to learn new things while his idea of fun was solving some puzzles. She had been a bit concerned about him, as she would have thought he would have been a regular ball of energy, like she was as a child. However, the more she thought about it, the less she worried, as his father was the same way. The only real friends he had were people that were much older than him. She could name them on one hand: Tsunade, Kakashi, and Shizune. They were the only people who really knew who Naruto's father was. She only really considered 2 people close to his age bracket. Uchiha Itachi and Shisui had taken her asking them for a favor very seriously. They would come over almost every other day to just hang out or play with Naruto. Naruto enjoyed their company very much. She had tried to get Naruto to hang around people his own age, but things never seemed to click. Naruto would always say they were too stupid to understand some of the things he tried explaining to them. However, regardless of how he acted to others his age or how he acted just around herself, she still loved him with all of her heart. She would begin his training soon, as he will need to know how to protect himself. 3 years later. 3 years had come and gone since Naruto had begun his training under various teachers. Some skills had taken him longer to master, but he had eventually gotten them down. He was currently awaiting for his next 2 senseis. He briefly thought back to his first lesson with his mother while he was waiting. Flashback. Okay Naruto, today I'm going to start your training. Now I want you to understand that this is going to be a lengthy process, and what you learn today needs to be practiced for the remainder of the year. Am I understood? Said Kushina, with a sweet smile on her face. Why yeah, understood Ka-chan, replied the 4-year-old. Good. Now I want you to take a seat on the ground, and cross your legs as well. I'm going to have you unlock your chakra, explained Kushina as she instructed him. Naruto proceeded to follow her instructions and sat down on the ground while crossing his legs. He looked up to his mother, further awaiting her orders. First off, answer me this. What is chakra? Chakra is the molding of the physical energy present in every cell of the body, and the spiritual energy gained from exercise and experience, stated Naruto, with pinpoint accuracy. Word for word from what you read, huh? Yep, he replied with a smile. Alright, now I want you to close your eyes and focus deep within yourself, she said, watching him close his eyes and began to concentrate. Next, she continued, you're going to feel an energy source within yourself flowing throughout your entire body. I want you to grab that energy, and bring it to the surface, she said, as she was patiently watching. Confusion was written over Naruto's face. Seeing the confused face on her son, she decided to find out what was wrong. What's wrong, Sochi? Can you not locate your chakra? She asked. No. I found it, but it's strange. What is? There are two energies for me to grab. One is blue and warm, while the other is red and malicious, explained Naruto, not really knowing what was going on. Quote. Kushina froze when he mentioned the second type, and immediately knew what it was. She would need to tread carefully here. Naruto, she spoke softly, I want you to grab the blue and warm feeling. Don't touch that other one, I will teach you about it, but not right now. Okay. She spoke slowly. Okay. I'm going to grab the first one, he replied. Kushina just watched as her son was concentrating, and saw a faint bluish outline on her son appear all around him, and knew he had done it. Congratulations, Naruto, you've successfully unlocked your chakra, said Kushina, as she went up and gave him a hug. Thanks, Ka-chan. You're welcome. Would you like to take a break or do you wish to continue? She asked, already knowing his response. I can keep going, he replied with a fire in his eyes. Right. Well, know that you have your chakra unlocked. We need to work on your control. Okay. What do I have to do? Questioned Naruto, looking at her. Well, first I'm going to place this leaf on your forehead and I want you to apply chakra to that leaf so it doesn't fall off. Okay. Is that all I'm going to be doing today? Queried Naruto. She thought. No, I am going to be teaching you how to handle and throw shuriken, kunai, ninja wire, etc. That will be your training schedule until I say otherwise, she said in a tone that meant it was not up for debate. Fine, he said, sighing, so I work on my chakra control, and practice with my shuriken and kunai, he said, making sure he heard right. That's correct. Flashback end. That had been his first year of training. Nothing but pure chakra control along with training in his ninja tools. It was only until the second year that things really began to take off for him. Flashback. Okay, Naruto, I know you've been learning how to scout out an area, and track a person's from Kakashi. From what he's told me, you excel at the things most shinobi tend to neglect. I'm proud of you, said Kushina as she praised her son. Thank you, Ka-chan, replied Naruto, giving her one of his rare smiles. You're welcome. Now I'm going to teach you some useful techniques, she said, as she could see him shaking with anticipation. Which ones? They are 3 basic techniques, but will be useful out in the field. They are the henge, kawarimi, and the bunshin, she said, as she explained what each did. Wow! Was all Naruto said, as he was left speechless at hearing what they did. Hee. I knew you would be impressed, chuckled Kushina watching her son's reaction. When can I get started? He asked in anticipation. Soon, but there is one thing I want to tell you, said Kushina, rather seriously. What is it? Along with your physical training and chakra control exercises, these are the only things you're going to be learning. I want you to have these mastered before we move on to something else, she said, as she explained that having something mastered could be the difference between living or dying. Now, she continued, I'm just going to give you the specifics of what your physical training will work on. Endurance, stamina, speed, pain tolerance, strength, power, flexibility, agility, coordination, balance, and accuracy, she listed off. Once Naruto heard this, he understood, and wanted to get his training underway. Flashback end. Oh Naruto, have you been waiting long? Asked one Uchiha Itachi in his weasel mask. No, sensei. I was just thinking, he replied. Very well then. Let's wait until Dragon arrives before we begin, stated the older Uchiha. Okay. Naruto knew that behind those Anbu masks were his two elder Uchiha friends. It was a very sad but interesting day that day, as he not only learned some vital information about himself, but one of his friends as well. Flashback. What? Shouted Naruto in complete disbelief. Yes. Myself along with Shisui have been accepted into the ranks of the Anbu. I just wanted to let you know that if we do not appear around regularly it is because we are on a mission, and not because we do not like you anymore, explained Itachi in a monotone voice. However, what he did not tell the young blonde before him was that both Shisui and himself have already been in the organization for a while now, and their next mission was regarding him. Many attempts had been made by outside forces on either his life or his mother's. While his mother could protect herself, he could not. Well, not yet anyways, thought Itachi. Itachi along with Shisui had been assigned by the Hokage to watch over the boy at all times possible. They of course knew who the boy's father was as they needed to know such information, and understood why he needed a bit more protection. I see, replied Naruto, as he wrapped his head around the information he was just given. Will you come to see me when you have time? Asked Naruto in a whisper. Of course. Well, I really must get going. I just wished to relay our situation to you, said Itachi, as he made his way out, but not before greeting Naruto's mother. Hello, Kushina-sama. Hello, Itachi-kun, replied Kushina as she watched the boy leave. Hello, Ka-chan, said a dejected Naruto. What's wrong, Naruto? She asked in a worried tone. And so he began to explain what he had just been told, and she now understood why he was a bit depressed. She explained to him that if Itachi had not valued their friendship then he wouldn't have bothered to let him know. That made him feel a bit better, and got out of his mood. I see you are ready to train in the other things I have to teach you, stated Kushina, looking at Naruto. Naruto nodded his head as the past year had seen him training in the specifics of stealth and infiltration. He had asked her how she knew such things, and she said she was once briefly part of the Anbu, until she got pregnant, and left it at that. Those two things along with his physical training, and his new chakra control exercise, tree walking, had done wonders for him. He was wondering what she would teach him next. I'm going to teach you this technique I learned from one of my friends. It's called the Toten Jutsu, she said. What does it do? It renders the user invisible during combat, she explained. That sounds useful, replied Naruto, thinking of such ways to use it. It is Toten Jutsu, transparent escape technique. And before his very eyes, his mother had vanished. He was about to call out to her, but something stopped him, and he forced himself to the ground. It was quick, but he felt the change in the air current after he had dropped. You have good instincts, Naruto. You dodged that strike well, but never stop moving, she yelled. Naruto heard her tone of voice, and immediately got himself up and put his defense. It had little effect as Kushina could easily bypass it. She knocked him around a few times, and let himself get back up again. She was impressed with his durability, but then again he was an Uzumaki. Shit, cursed Naruto mentally. He needed to find out just where she was, but how? Unbeknownst to the two Uzumaki that were fighting, but there were two people watching them. It was two Anbu that had been watching since the beginning. One had a weasel mask on while the other had a dragon mask. What do you think, Itachi? Asked Dragon. How many times must I tell you? Don't call me by my name, sighed Itachi, shaking his head. Oops. I mean, what do you think? Weasel. Dragon spoke the last few words in a serious tone. I think he needs to do something quick or he will continue to be punched and kicked by his mother, answered Weasel as they both returned to watching. Damn it. I need to do something. I know, thought Naruto, as something came to him. He rolled once again as he felt the current in the air shift, but this time while on the ground, he snatched up a handful of dirt. He quickly got up and readied himself when he felt the shift again, he threw the dirt. Hee hee. Nice try, Naruto. Something like that will not work on an opponent who is much faster than you, she explained to him, as she rounded on him once again. Oof, grunted Naruto as he focused his eyes as much as he could, hoping to find her. Might as well end this little demonstration, thought Kushina, but not before she could land one more hit. She balled her fist up, and was about to bring it down on top of his head when something incredible happened. He caught it. What the hell? Shouted Kushina in disbelief. Gasp. She couldn't believe it, but it couldn't be an illusion. Her son was looking at her not with his own eyes, but with the eyes of a different person. She was looking directly at a pair of Sharingan eyes. "Bu" were the last words on her mouth before she received a kick directly to her stomach, knocking the air out of her as she fell to the ground. Weasel and Dragon. They were both just as shocked as Kushina was. They couldn't believe that their friend had those eyes, it didn't make any sense. They needed more information before reporting this. Naruto and Kushina. Naruto looked directly at the downed form of his mother, and quickly ran towards her to check on her. Ka-chan. Ka-chan. Are you okay? I'm sorry. He repeated over and over again in worry. It's okay, Naruto. I just need to catch my breath, she said, never leaving his eyes. What's wrong? I think we need to call Tsunade, and give you a checkup, she responded. Flashback end. Oh man, and what a checkup that was, thought Naruto, thinking back to that day. After his checkup had been finished, they had taken a blood sample. It was obvious he had Uchiha blood flowing through his veins, but who had he received it from? His mother, or his father? From what the results had said when Tsunade had gotten them back, Naruto was 33% Uchiha, 33% Kagaya, and 34% Uzumaki. Who knew? Flashback. Really? Where did I get whose blood from? Asked Naruto, looking around the room. We would like to know that as well, thought both Itachi and Shisui, as they were hidden from view, still watching over Naruto. Well, started Tsunade, you received your Uzumaki blood from your mother, but you also received your Kagaya blood from her as well, stated Tsunade. Everybody was now looking at Kushina, waiting for an explanation. She told them that she was in fact half Kagaya on her mother's side. I see, said the busty Senju, well that answers that question. Which pretty much means you received your Uchiha blood from your father, and from what I've seen on the results, you're actually related to someone from that clan, she said out loud. Who is my father? And who am I related to? Naruto asked in rapid succession. Tsunade looked to Kushina before answering, and got a nod. Your father is or was, Namikaze Minato or Uchiha Minato, the late Yondaime Hokage. Shock, sadness, relief, anger, were the emotions that had been going on inside of Naruto when he finally got the news he had been waiting for. I see, he said. That's it, you see, spoke Tsunade as she believed the boy would have an outburst. What else do you want me to say? I finally have the answer to who my father was, but I do need time to adjust to it, he explained, looking directly at the woman. Tsunade just nodded her head, and continued with her information, now as to who you are related to by way of your father. Your grandfather is Uchiha Kagami while his son Shisui would be your uncle, said Tsunade, revealing the information. Gasp. What was that? Wondered Tsunade, as she thought she heard something. You need to control yourself, dragon, signed Weasel using hand gestures. Roger that. He signed back using the same gestures. Really? I'm related to Shisui, that's so cool, said Naruto, as he looked up to the older Uchiha boy. Naruto, spoke Kushina, getting his attention, you can't tell anyone about this. I understand the consequences, Ka-chan. I may be young, but I'm not stupid, retorted Naruto, as he subtly activated his dojutsu. He didn't know how or why, but he had very acute senses. He had only really used them on instinct when previously fighting his mother, but now he was doing it automatically. He had felt a shift in the air from somewhere in the room. He dared not move his head lest he give himself away. He was quickly scanning the lower half of the room, and then proceeded to move higher up. There. He finally saw them. It was two, but they seemed to be listening in on the conversation while completely ignoring him. So he has the battle instincts of the Kagaya, the body of an Uzumaki, and the dojutsu of the Uchiha. I must say, he has the makings of a great shinobi, stated Kushina, as everybody digested what she had just said. It was a very scary prospect. Just the Sharingan alone can make an individual dangerous, but coupled along with the vitality, stamina, and humongous chakra reserves of the Uzumaki and you have the makings of a powerhouse. Then add in the aptitude for battle from the Kagaya clan and it just make the word powerhouse seem obsolete. You do indeed have the makings of something great, Naruto-kun, spoke Shizune for the first time. Man, imagine if Naruto had the Shikatsumyaku. Kushina said to herself. Everyone, but Naruto, shivered at that thought. While those present in the room had never fought an actual user of that bloodline, they were still positive they would come out victorious, they were just unsure of what shape they would come out in. That is indeed a scary thought. Itachi thought to himself, as he was so engrossed that he never saw the pair of blood-red eyes staring straight at him. Itachi was now in a dilemma, as he was sure his friend was in as well. What do they exactly do with this information? If he gave it to the Hokage, the man would have no choice but to share it with the rest of the clan heads. While he was positive his father would not try anything being who the boy's mother was, but that did not mean others would not. Naruto's circumstances are too good to be true, and others would try to exploit the boy behind his mother's back. That dreaded CRA came to Itachi's mind, and he actually allowed his emotions to overtake him for a brief second. He was disgusted with how they treat any who were the last of their clan. He did not want that for Naruto, as he was responsible, along with Shisui, for acting as older brothers and taking care of him in ways only they could. If the information from this little meeting were to be exposed, it would set off a chain of events that would undoubtedly harm Naruto, and Konoha, in the short and long run. He did not want that, so for now, he would keep it to himself. Itachi turned to Shisui and could see the emotions raging within the man's eyes. It seemed he was not the only one with some internal strife. He was going to signal him for them to leave and wait when they came out, but noticed something that momentarily stopped his breathing. Two Sharingan eyes were staring directly at his position, and he knew they had been spotted. He noticed that Shisui had stiffened as he saw the blood-red eyes of their clan. Itachi briefly wondered if Naruto would reveal their locations. We made a rookie mistake, thought the fresh new Anbu shinobi as he was caught unaware. He breathed a sigh of relief as the boy had stopped applying chakra to his eyes, and turned his head in the opposite direction. Before he left though, Naruto gave him one last look, and Itachi had received the message. Itachi and Shisui disappeared immediately after that. Both Uchiha were in and around the canopy that surrounded the Uzumaki compound, and were awaiting their visitor. They had been waiting since they had left the hospital, which ended roughly 30 minutes ago. They did not wait much long as Naruto appeared not a few yards away from the trees that were hiding them. You two can come out now, called out Naruto. The two seemed to hesitate at his casual demeanor as he called out to them. However, both knew they had to hear him out as he had not revealed them during the hospital visit. Neither doubted it would have looked bad on them, two Anbu spying on a kid and his mother, and even now it still looked bad as the boy's mother would not bother listening to either of them and take her own son's word over theirs. We need to tread carefully here, Itachi told himself as he and Shisui dropped down. Ah, there you are, said Naruto. So it would seem, replied Itachi trying to sound different. What did you wish to discuss? He asked. I already who you two are, so can you take off your masks already? Stated Naruto. Quote. Both men were shocked and had shown as much as their bodies went rigid. And how do you know this? Asked Dragon. Simple really. Who would the Hokage trust to keep an eye on me other than the two people who already know me and my habits, and two new Anbu, isn't that right? Itachi, Shisui. Itachi merely shook his head and let out a small sigh. It seemed his friend was very astute. He did not think the little knowledge he had given him earlier would come back to haunt him. You are correct. However, I must ask you call us by our code names. You may call me Weasel. You sure are smart Naruto, isn't he Ida? I mean Weasel. By the way, you can call me Dragon. Noted. Now I have a favor to ask of you two, since you two are the only two Uchiha that I know, said Naruto as he could tell both men had a raised eyebrow behind their masks. And that is, replied Itachi needing more information. I want you two to train me in mastering my Sharingan. Flashback end. Naruto was smiling at those memories as he didn't think he could or ever would again surprise both Uchiha again. He had come to terms about that other piece of information regarding his father. He wasn't sure what to feel for the man. He held no hate for the man, but did not love him either. That's where his reasoning had led him. On one hand, the man had selflessly given his life for his village and understood his thinking at the time. However, he had left him without a father, a role model, a man to strive to emulate, and a friend. He had shed some tears for the man who was his father. However, that was where his feelings for the man stopped. He had no obligation to strive for, emulate, or surpass a dead man, and would instead strive to surpass his mother. He was brought out of his thoughts by a voice he recognized. Yo, sorry I'm late. I forgot what time I was supposed to be here and overslept, said Dragon. Both Naruto and Itachi could tell he was telling the truth if his bedhead was any indication. Neither said anything and instead decided to ignore it for now. Right, well let's get this started. Naruto, welcome to Sharingan 101, informed Dragon trying to lighten the mood. Now, Naruto nodded his head at his friend. Glad to be here. Now, he started. From your knowledge, what can you tell me about the Sharingan? Not much, admitted Naruto. Kinda the reason why I asked the two of you to help me. Not much information is open to me, due to it being a bloodline, he stated. Plus, I can't just walk over to the Uchiha district, and just ask for this information, he added, finishing his point. This is true, said Shisui, knowing everything Naruto just said was correct. Indeed, added Itachi, completely agreeing with the blonde's assessment. Oka, was all Shisui said before getting cut off. Excuse me, Dragon, interrupted Itachi. But I believe there is something we need to discuss before we can move any further with this training session. Shisui was surprised that the ever-stoic Itachi had cut him off. And that is, Itachi turned his head, and looked directly at Naruto. I know you already know this, and have stated it, but I just want to restate it, spoke Itachi in a serious voice. Nobody must know of our involvement in this. Naruto already understood this, but reassured the teen with a nod of his head. Good, responded Itachi, and motioned for Shisui to continue. Now to begin again, before I was rudely interrupted. Since you have just unlocked your dojutsu, we will only explain what one tomo will allow you to do, said Shisui. No point in going into further detail when you aren't even there yet, he added. First off, took over Itachi. The Sharingan is only a tool, it alone will not make you unbeatable, he said, stressing this point. Many Uchiha have believed this, and have lost their lives as a result. Understood, replied Naruto in a serious tone, showing them he understood. He's right, agreed Shisui. Be sure to take that statement to heart. The eye itself allows you to see chakra flow while giving color to it. It will also allow you to tell if a person is under an illusion, and it gives the user a clearer perception of things. As your eyes continue to mature, so will these abilities, finished Shisui. Having at least one tomo in your eyes will allow you to at least copy hand movements, like pencil movement, to a degree, explained Itachi. Oh, I almost forgot, said Shisui in realization. No pair of eyes will ever have the same level of ability. Naruto arched an eyebrow as he was confused by this piece of information. What do you mean by that? What I mean is, for example, while all Sharingan eyes can cast genjutsu, some are just going to be much better at it, explained Shisui, who then turned to Itachi. Like him, for example, his eyes are much better at casting illusions than mine ever will. However, he continued, just because his are better doesn't mean I can't cast illusions either, his are just much stronger. My eyes allow me the use of high-level hypnotism, which is a form of genjutsu. He puffed his chest out when announcing his ability. Interesting, I did not know that each pair of eyes had their own unique skill, said Naruto, wondering what his would be. Leave it to Shisui to give away what our eyes can do, sighed Itachi, shaking his head and rubbing the bridge of his nose. I need to stop this now. I am now going to go over the training schedule, announced Itachi, taking over for Shisui. You will still continue to train with your mother, as a strong body is also needed to utilize our dojutsu to its full potential. We will train you after your session with Kushina-sama is finished. Itachi could see a bit of a grimace on the young boy's face. I realize that you will be tired, but that is nothing more than a petty excuse. If you truly wish to be strong, then you will dig deep and push through it, and flourish because of it, finished Itachi. The weasel mask-wearing teen could see the fire in Naruto's eyes after his little speech, and knew his friend would do his best. You can count on me, exclaimed Naruto. Very good, we begin tomorrow. 1 year later. It's been a full year since Naruto had activated his bloodline, and he could say with a straight face that he was happy at the moment. His training with his mother had also taught him yet another skill which all ninjas should be adept at. Flashback. Naruto stood stock in his backyard while currently awaiting instruction from his mother. Naruto. She started. I'm very proud of you, to not only have mastered what I, and others have taught you, but to not once ever complain. Good work, she said as she gave him a big hug. Hee. He chuckled. Thanks, Ka-chan, he said, returning the hug. She smiled at him. You're welcome. Now we will move on to the next segment of your training, sabotage. Sabotage, said Naruto, trying the word out. There will be times when you will need to destroy something instead of fighting, she explained. However, it does not just involve destruction. It also entails obstruction, disruption, and subversion. What is subversion? He asked as he knew what the other two were. Good question, she told him. Subversion refers to an attempt to transform the social order, and its structures of power, authority, and hierarchy, She lectured, but saw his confused expression. It means changing the status quo. Ah. He said as he thought of something. Is that why you trained me in stealth and infiltration first? He asked as it made sense to teach him how to sneak in to destroy things. She nodded her head. Correct. Everything I or others have taught you to this point will be used in conjunction with each other or in some cases, separately. I see. He said. Other than sabotage, what else will I be learning? A new chakra control exercise for starters. Which is, motioning his arms telling her to continue. Water walking. He nodded his head as he had already mastered tree walking the year prior when he had been introduced to it. Plus, she continued, I want you to get better with your writing, which is why you're going to be doing some calligraphy training. Calligraphy. He made a face. Why that? It's for something I have planned in the future. Was all she said. Oh. He said, a bit disappointed she didn't elaborate. Let's get started on this new training then. Flashback end. While his training with his mother had been going great, it was his other training with the two teen Uchihas that had him giddy. He had finally managed to progress his dojutsu to its next stage while also discovering the ability of his eyes. Flashback. Naruto. Spoke Shisui. Yes. We've been training you in your dojutsu for the past year, and while you have progressed physically, your eyes have not, he stated. So I've noticed. Deadpanned Naruto. Which is why the both of us, Itachi and myself, have decided to up your progression rate, he chirped happily. And just how do you two plan on doing that? Naruto asked suspiciously. Simple. Avoid the shiny pointy objects that we are about to hurl at you. Shisui said nonchalantly. Huh, was Naruto's brilliant retort. Dodge, shouted Shisui, as he and Itachi threw shuriken and kunai. And so began the dodging game of death. However, there was something both Anbu members had failed to mention to their student. Most if not all of the shuriken and kunai were blunt. They did this to keep the threat of injury a real possibility. Naruto had begun to slow down somewhat, and this was noticeable by the few tears on his clothes. He had actually been tagged a few times that resulted in scratches, but he believed it to be a dull one in the bunch and would not chance it on the rest being similar. Both of the elder Uchiha were running quite low on their practice tools, but then Itachi had an idea that he wanted to try before they stopped the exercise. He weaved his hand seals, ram, rat, bird, boar, tiger, shuriken cage bunshin no jutsu. He threw his last shuriken, and watched it travel a few feet before multiplying into 100 more. What happened next completely took both Uchiha by surprise. Naruto had dodged the oncoming hail of shuriken, which they knew he would, or they would have saved him, but it was how he had done it. He had moved fast, far much faster than either of them had ever seen him move. They decided to halt the training session, and wanted to know how he had done it. Just as they approached him, and were about to question him, they stopped. Both noticed the change in Naruto's eyes. They had progressed one step further. Congratulations Naruto, said Shisui. Your eyes have moved one step closer to fully maturing, and as a reward for doing so, I'm going to teach you a new technique. Really? Said Naruto, who couldn't keep the excitement out of his voice. Thanks Dragon, thanks Weasel, for helping me get one step closer. Naruto thanked them while bowing to them. Itachi simply nodded his head, and was honestly a bit surprised to see Naruto bowing to him. He chose this moment to ask what had been on his mind. You're welcome, and do you mind if I ask you a question? Naruto titled his head forward a fraction, telling him it was okay. How did you move so fast? Did you apply chakra to your legs? Were his questions. No to your second question, answered Naruto and continued. I simply saw you throwing the shuriken while watching it multiply, and I just moved out of the way, he explained. I see, was Itachi's reply, still trying to figure out how he did it. His own eyes lingered on Naruto's, and decided to try something. Do you mind if I throw these at you? Asked Itachi while holding a few shuriken. I just want to see how well your eyes can track them, he added quickly. Naruto simply raised an eyebrow at the odd request, but accepted. Okay, he said as he got into position. Itachi's fingers had a firm grasp on each individual shuriken, his body tensed a bit as he got into his own throwing stance. He released the first set that were in his right hand, but immediately noticed that Naruto had moved to the opposite side. He moved a second before I even threw them. Itachi muttered in a bit of disbelief. Naruto's movements, along with Itachi's throwing motion, were near instantaneous, and while most would assume that the blonde had just moved faster, Itachi saw differently. He readied his other hand, but just before they left his fingertips, Naruto had already moved to the safest possible location, completely avoiding his attack. There it is again, Itachi thought in frustration. He knew for a fact that his blonde friend was not moving faster than he showed, his own eyes showed him that. Then what is it? It was almost like he knows where I'm going to throw them before I do. That was when it hit him. Precognition, whispered Itachi, but loud enough for the other two to hear. Precognition, repeated the other two, wondering what he was talking about. That is the special ability your eyes have, stated Itachi, and even he couldn't believe the words that were coming out of his own mouth, as he couldn't fathom such an ability. Oh, realized Naruto. You mean how like either of yours allow you to cast stronger illusions or hypnotism? Correct, replied Itachi, still miffed about his friend giving away such information. Cool, indeed. Not even a fully matured Sharingan can predict things as fast or as far ahead as yours can. It is a truly frightening ability, praised Itachi. Sounds like a super useful ability, said Naruto, who couldn't help but smirk at this. This is true, replied Shisui. But remember not to let this go to your head, this is only a tool to help you, he said, reminding the blonde about their earlier conversation. Itachi nodded his head, hoping to add extra emphasis on what they were telling him. Even if these words did not get across to him, his next few certainly would. While I admit it is a very useful ability, I can already see fatal flaws in it as well. For one, began Itachi, if you fight a high-class ninja and move before they do anything, then you are just telegraphing yourself, and they will act accordingly. The next thing I noticed, he continued. While being able to predict a person's movement by body language, what about ninjutsu? Or genjutsu? He asked. How will you react if your enemy realizes all they need to do is sub-vocalize their attacks in order to harm you? He asked as he broke down the ability on his first glance. That's the Uchiha clan's prodigy for you, muttered Shisui, as he was nowhere near as astute as his friend was. Oh, said Naruto, completely dejected now. I guess you're right about that. Listen, sighed Itachi. Everyone in this world of ours has their own strengths, and their own weaknesses. It is up to the individual, however, to realize this, and do something about it. No technique is without its own weakness. He finished. Even yours? Asked Naruto while looking his friend in the eyes. Even mine. He did not hesitate when he answered. Which is why I train to compensate for it. Same thing for Dragon. He explained, trying to give his friend some closure. He is right, you know, agreed Shisui. And that sure is one handy ability, Naruto. The predictive capabilities of your eyes far outclasses ours, complimented Shisui, hoping to cheer him up after the brutal explanation from Itachi. Itachi could see what his friend was up to, and decided to change the subject. Now, I believe we should explain the advantages of the next stage. Right, Well, the second stage allows you to use the other abilities we've already stated to you, but it also allows you to copy techniques now, explained Shisui, knowing just how his nephew would react. Cool, replied Naruto, excited. Naruto, said Itachi. Now that your dojutsu allows you to copy any technique, barring bloodline techniques, you can copy anything from generic techniques to an original, he explained. However, he continued, I suggest not copying original techniques from your comrades. You can, but I guarantee you they will view you differently once you do, and not in a good way. Naruto understood what his friend was telling him. He had no qualms about stealing original techniques from his enemies, who were probably trying to kill him. He also understood that last part as well. Thank you for the advice, thanked Naruto, before he remembered something. Oh, how about that technique? He said, salivating at learning something new. He turned to Shisui. Oh yeah, muttered Shisui. This is the technique that made me famous before I joined up, bragged Shisui. Naruto perked up at this, and grew more excited. He didn't know his uncle was famous. Outside of these walls, enemy shinobi tremble when they hear this name, while the kunoichi have to hold themselves back from having their way with me. They know me as Shunshin no Shisui, stated Shisui proudly, completely oblivious that he just named himself while in Anbu gear. Itachi merely let loose a sigh from his lips, and shook his head at his friend, and wondered just how his friend had even been accepted into the Anbu ranks. Whatever, muttered Itachi uncharacteristically. Naruto already knows who we are. I'm going to teach you the Shunshin no Jutsu. Flashback end. And learn it it had taken him a short while to master it, but he had done it. He did not copy it with his eyes as he wished to learn this one the old-fashioned way. It was also to show his friends that he was taking their words seriously. Right now, he was currently taking a break from his training, and was currently on his way to train his brain, at the library. He enjoyed reading, but what really grabbed and pulled him in was one subject in particular, history. Or more specifically, certain individuals in history. There were certainly many names throughout history that were respected, but were feared just as much. Some such as Senju Tobarama, Uchiha Izuna, Senju Toka, Mu the Nadaime Tsuchikage, and Z the Sandaime Raikage, just to name a few. However, while those people made their own contributions to the world he now currently lives in today, it was two other individuals that had started it all, and with their power saw it accomplished. He was talking about two legendary figures, the Uchiha Madara, and the Shinobi no Kami, Senju Hashirama. If there was one word he could use to describe himself when regarding these two, it would be enamored. He was enamored with both men, and their prowess in battle. Granted, there wasn't much information regarding the Uchiha, but anytime Hashirama's name was brought up, the Uchiha's name was not far behind. He also read anything he could on specific battles or wars that have long since passed. It was always a good idea to learn from history so as to not repeat it. It not only helped in learning the tactics from his own village, but from other villages as well. However, he was trying to learn a bit more on a certain subject that all of his teachers have either forgotten or just won't teach him, assassination. He figured that if he was going to be one of the best, then he needed to be knowledgeable in all fields of shinobi life. From what he remembered, there were many books, some harder to get than others, that held information regarding what he had just been thinking about. He was going to be at the library for a very long time today. 3 years later. 3 years had come and gone for one Uzumaki Naruto, and he had grown well. He was a healthy 10-year-old boy that stood at 4 feet 3 inches, and weighed 70 pounds. He had let his hair grow out to the point that he almost resembled his father, and the only reason people didn't see it was because he had no real interaction with the people. The only real difference that separated him from his father were the blood-red tips, that were bordering black, that he had received from his mother. And speaking of his mother, he was currently following her as she was leading him over to one of her friend's house. Apparently, she wanted him to make friends with people his age, and it was because of that they had taken a break from training. He still remembered when she had asked him. Flashback. Hey Naruto, hollered Kushina. He replied, not looking up from what he was doing. Listen up, I'm going over to a friend's house. She has 2 kids that I think are your age, do you want to go and meet them? He breathed in through his nose and exhaled through his mouth. No. Kushina growled a bit at his response. Well, too damn bad, 'cause you're going or I will beat your unconscious, and drag you there myself, Bane. Fine. He sighed, resigned to his fate. Flashback end. That had been a few hours prior to their current situation. He looked around, but he didn't really recognize the area they were in, and concluded that they were still a ways away. He thought back to the memorable events that had transpired over the past 3 years, and how his training with his 2 other friends had been completed. Flashback. Naruto. Age 8. Congratulations Naruto. Congratulated Itachi. You now have a fully matured Sharingan. Naruto simply nodded his head, and tried to re-catch his breath from the training session he just had, with 2 opponents. It had been both Shisui's and Itachi's idea to help awaken the last stage faster by putting him in a simulated battle. Naruto's eyes had responded to his turmoil, and they had evolved to help deal with the situation. Thanks, Weasel. Dragon. He thanked them in between breaths. You're welcome. Both said. What am I going to be learning next? Here, Itachi said, handing him a piece of paper. Channel some chakra into that, and we will go from there. Naruto had never taken his eyes off of the tiny piece of paper, as he knew what they were going to teach him now, nature manipulation. To think that you could learn so much from such a small piece of paper. Smirked Naruto at the thought of it. He did as he was told, and applied a small amount of his chakra. He was quite happy with what he saw. The paper had a large tear right down the middle, signifying a strong affinity towards futon. What happened next was just as simultaneous as the first reaction. The paper itself ignited, and burned to ash. Impressive. Complimented Shisui. Not many can claim to have 2 equally strong nature affinities at such a young age. Hee. Chuckled Naruto. Thanks. I must agree with Dragon as well. Spoke Itachi. However, since neither of us have a wind affinity, we will focus on training your fire affinity. Right. Let's get started then. Said Naruto, really wanting to learn. Hummed Itachi in thought. What's wrong, Weasel? Asked Shisui as he saw his friend thinking. I believe that with the amount of chakra he has, and the fact that he has been doing chakra control since he was very little, it should allow him to use our clan's favorite technique. That's actually not a bad idea, said Shisui. Sounds like something I would have said. He muttered to himself. What was that? Itachi asked. Nothing. The Uchiha prodigy nodded his head. Then we are in agreement then? He asked Shisui, who gave him a nod. Very well then. Naruto called Itachi. Yes. I want you to watch me carefully. Itachi said as he ran through his hand seals. Naruto saw this and quickly activated his Sharingan. Horse, snake, ram, boar, monkey, horse, tiger, Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu, fire release, great fireball technique. Naruto watched in fascination as his friend had breathed air into his lungs, and then exhaled his breath with a giant fireball. It was massive in size, bigger than some of the trees in the area, and it completely burned everything in its path. Itachi cut the chakra flow, and stood tall. He gazed at Naruto, who was still looking at his fireball as it continued to travel and then dissipate. Naruto, spoke Itachi, grabbing the blonde's attention. Did you see what I did? I did. Explain. Well, I saw you gathering fire chakra at the base of your stomach. Then I saw you apply regular chakra into your throat so as to not burn yourself, then you inhaled some air, and released your attack, explained Naruto. Correct. But why did I need to breathe in air for? He questioned. The air fueled the fire in your mouth, which made your attack bigger and stronger. Correct again. Praised Itachi. This conversation aside, we need to discuss something very important with you, he said in a serious voice. Naruto caught the tone, and that is, Itachi did not want to say this, but he had no choice. I'm afraid we will not be able to continue our training sessions with you. What? Why? Naruto asked in confusion. Did somebody find out about this? He added. No, nobody found out about our group. Dragon, along with myself, are soon going to be assigned a rather long mission. Oh, responded Naruto, sadly looking down. How much longer do we have? Let's see here. You're about to turn 9 in 2 weeks, so I would wager we have about 10 months before we depart. Naruto grimaced. That's actually not a lot of time, he stated. No, it isn't. Time will fly by. Which is why in the remaining time we have, we will teach you to the best of our ability. Everything we will teach you is going to be split into months. Naruto raised an eyebrow. How are we going to work this? Simple. We will focus on one subject for 4 months, then another for 3 months, and we will repeat the process, he explained. The only question is, what you wish to focus on? I want to focus the first 4 months on ninjutsu, announced Naruto. Very well then, I want you to master this technique. When you do, we will move on to the next technique, said Itachi, steering the conversation back to his training. But what if I can't master it before we move on to the next part of my training? Asked a worried Naruto. Do not panic. Even if you don't master it, and we move on, we will leave some scrolls with you that contain techniques, reassured Itachi. At regular intervals, of course, he added. Okay, said Naruto, glad he would continue to learn, but sad he would be losing his 2 friends. Flashback end. That had been the first 4 months, and unfortunately for Naruto, he would have to now make do with scrolls. He had taken an entire month to master the first technique, and had mastered 2 more along the way. He hasn't been training with his mother as much, except for calligraphy. She had been a bit more busy doing her own things, and had left him to his own devices, hence the library. Speaking of the library, he had read most if not all books regarding the art of assassination. He could say without a doubt he knew how to assassinate a person, but actually putting it to practice was something else. The remaining 6 months had flown by as he spent it with Itachi and Shisui, as they taught him new things that would greatly benefit him in the years to come. Flashback. Naruto. Age 9. Okay Naruto, it's just going to be me today, and the rest of the 3 months, stated Itachi in monotone voice. Where's Shisui? Shisui has some work to do that will take him a while to finish. Okay then, what will we be doing today? I'm going to teach you my area of expertise. Naruto's eyes lit up at hearing this news. You're going to teach me genjutsu. Correct. But first, he said. What can you tell me about genjutsu? Let's see here. Genjutsu is like ninjutsu, in that you need chakra, and sometimes hand seals, but instead of affecting the body, it affects the mind. It then causes a disruption in a person's senses, explained Naruto. Itachi nodded his head and agreed with his answer. Correct, but we who have the Sharingan are given an advantage over others. We can cast illusions with just our eyes alone. Of course, we can also use hand seals, and I advise you to do that so as to keep your eyes a secret, but all it takes is a glance, and we have them, said Itachi, catching his breath after a lengthy explanation. Naruto took in all of the information he had just received. So what are you going to teach me? I'm going to teach you how to cast generic illusions with your eyes, and one of my favorite techniques. What's it called? Inquired Naruto. Megan. Kasugui no Jutsu, demonic illusion, shackling stakes technique. Flashback end. Naruto grimaced as that had been a long 3 months. A shiver coursed through his body at that memory, and he knew it was an illusion, but he would rather not go through that a second time. The blonde had also learned that like humans, dogs and other species of mammal can also be placed in an illusion. He moved past that memory, and thought to the last 3 months he had spent with his uncle. Flashback. Naruto. Age 9 Kant. Yo Naruto. Greeted Shisui. Hello. As you know, I was not here the past 3 months as I had been assigned a mission, and now it has been Itachi. So it will be just the two of us, he said. And as I understand it, he has been teaching you genjutsu. Yep. Then I'm going to teach you kenjutsu, he stated. Is there any particular style of blade you wish to use, or would you like to learn from the one I use? Offered Shisui. What type do you use? In my line of work, I use a ninjutsu, answered Shisui. Naruto was thinking of all of the blades he had read about. I'd like to use a kodachi. A kodachi, huh? A defensive blade. How good is your taijutsu then? Subpar, as I haven't really focused on it during my time training. Naruto answered truthfully. I see. Then perhaps using 2 kodachi will solve your taijutsu problem, and I do believe I know of a style suited for dual kodachi. Well, he continued, for now we will just focus on you getting used to handling one, and then we will incorporate the second one. Right. And so began the kenjutsu training. Flashback end. Of course, all good things must come to an end, and he had spent his remaining time on his own trying to master what they had left him. He had received multiple scrolls with detailed writings on numerous fire techniques, genjutsu, and his new kenjutsu style. He had mastered a few more ninjutsu along with some genjutsu. However, his kenjutsu was the one that was taking him the longest. And before he knew it, he had already hit his 10th birthday. Not much had happened after that as the months went by. His mother was worried since he didn't socialize much with kids his own age, as there were none at his party. Mostly nothing but adults. It was the reason why he and his mother were currently on their way to her friend's house. Some part of him was hoping they were going to see his grandfather, Uchiha Kagami. He knew why he wasn't allowed to see him as he would need to go to the compound, and that would just raise questions. It still didn't mean he couldn't hope for it. His musings were cut short as he noticed his mother come to a stop. He did as well, and began to look around the area. Noting special. He commented looking around. It was then when he noticed something, 2 red markings. There were 2 red markings in front of a compound wall similar to that of the Uzumaki compound. He recognized the markings immediately from the various books he's read. The Inuzuka clan, huh? His thoughts were cut short as the gates attached to the wall had begun to open, and it revealed a person there waiting for them. A woman. A woman indeed. She was rather tall in his opinion, but then again most people are when you're only 10 years old. As he kept staring at her, there was one word that came to mind that could describe her perfectly. Feral. The woman in front of him had long, spiky, untamed brown hair, vertical slit-like pupils along with elongated nails, and canine teeth. She was proudly wearing her clan markings over her cheeks, and over her eyes. Naruto continued to stare at her, oblivious of his open leering. His eyes roamed all over her body, and he could tell she trained, if her well-toned legs and rear end was anything to go by. He nodded to himself in a silent approval. His eyes had begun to travel upwards, but stopped and lingered on her. Not as big as Ka-chan's, but they're still decent, he analyzed as he recalled what he had read in books detailing human anatomy. Like what you see, pup, teased a feminine voice. His eyes widened marginally, and that's when he realized what he had been doing. He had been caught staring. I think I'm just a tad bit too old for you, repeated the same voice. I guess mother was right. This is what happens when I don't have much interaction with others. Naruto was inwardly chastising himself for his mistake. Hee, sorry about that, Sum-chan, apologized Kushina, as the situation was just as awkward for her. Don't worry about it, Kushina-chan, he was just admiring a mature woman's body, waved off the now named Sum. I apologize if I have offended you, Sum-sama. This time it was Naruto who apologized while showing her respect. Such a well-mannered child, wish mine was like that. Sum muttered the last part. No apology needed, and dropped the sama honorific. Just call me Sum, or if you really want to, Sum-chan. She laughed at seeing his flustered face. Naruto had gone beet red from what she had just asked of him. What a pure boy, you don't see much of that these days, said Sum, trying to get a read on him. I guess I should properly introduce myself. My name is Inuzuka Sum, clan leader of the Inuzuka clan, and this is my partner Kuromaru. Nice to meet you. She introduced herself with a greeting. Naruto froze when he heard her full title. Oh crap, I was just caught checking out the clan head, he grimaced. Sum just had to hold her laugh in as she saw the young blonde grimace, she waved it off. Like I already said, don't worry about it, she trailed off. Uzumaki Naruto. He introduced himself. Well, don't worry about it, Naruto-kun. Now, shall we head inside? Gestured Sum. Inuzuka compound. As Sum led them through the compound, Naruto couldn't help but look around. It was decent to mid-size that could probably house up to a various amount of members, but then again he didn't know the exact numbers of this clan. It was a rather practical setting in his opinion. The structures around the compound were built to accommodate if necessary, but were able to withstand an attack if need be. He didn't even have to focus his senses to hear the air filled with barking and loud shouts. Another detail he noticed was the lack of plant life, or ponds, but chalked it up to the numerous amounts of dogs running around, and he knew what dogs would do to plants and ponds. After the mini tour had been completed, the clan leader had taken them to her personal home, where he was introduced to her children. Hi, chirped the boy. I'm Inuzuka Kiba. Nice to meet you. He stuck out his hand in greeting. A bit too loud for my tastes, was the first impression Naruto had of Kiba. Likewise, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, who reached out and shook the outstretched hand. Arf, arf, whoops, sorry about that, apologized Kiba. This little guy up here is my partner, say hi Akamaru. Arf, hello, greeted Naruto with a slightly raised eyebrow, but shrugged his shoulders. Well, him being loud aside, both of them seem nice enough, he believed, and then shifted his attention to the Sum's other child. If he had to take a wild guess, he would wager she was about 3 to 5 years older than him. He was silently studying her, but he was unaware she was doing the exact same to him. Not bad, definitely one to look out for in the future. A smirk had made its way to her face. Uzumaki Naruto. Inuzuka Hana. They both gave each other a nod. Naruto took note that while Hana was an Inuzuka, she looked the complete opposite from the rest of her clan. The only thing in common she had with the rest were the clan markings on her cheeks. She didn't have elongated canine teeth or nails, nor did she have wild untamed hair. She was the prototype of what the rest of her clan would look like if they had a softer appearance. She inherited long brown hair, which was in a ponytail, along with large black eyes. Just stunning were the thoughts of one blonde Uzumaki as he was yet again checking out another woman of the Inuzuka clan. Good choice of clothing as well, he commented as she had on a jacket along with form-fitting shorts that just extenuated her curves. Perhaps high C cup, guessed Naruto as he was staring at her unzipped jacket which just happened to show off a generous amount of cleavage. Should I be expecting grand pups sometime soon, Naruto-kun? Teased Tsume as she saw how both her daughter and Naruto were sizing up one another. Wah! A flabbergasted Naruto said. Ha 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 ha, I'm just kidding, laughed the clan leader. Both Naruto and Hana blushed at just what was insinuated. I'm going to go and take a shower, announced Hana. Oh, do you want someone to go and take a peek? Is that why you announced it to the world? Hana-chan, stated Tsume with a wink at her daughter. Hana turned even redder, and had said nothing while proceeding to the restroom. Well, I wouldn't mind if he did take a peek. I could show him what he would be in store for. She giggled to herself while sauntering off, knowing Naruto's eyes were still trained on her backside. Kushina just stood in the room mouth agape some moments while getting angry in others, but sighed as she knew her friend was just messing around. Well, I'll leave Naruto in your care, Tsume-chan. Naruto, whose eyes were still on Hana's backside, widened when he heard this, and snapped his head in his mother's direction. Where are you going, Ka-chan? I'm only going to be gone for a little while as I have some business with the Hokage, she explained while hugging him. I'll be back to pick you up after I'm finished, and do try to make a friend, son, she whispered the last part. Fine. He sighed. Let's head outside, Kiba, Naruto called out. Coming. Hokage Tower. We see one Uzumaki Kushina standing before the Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. What did you wish to discuss this evening, Kushina? Sarutobi breathed out a puff of smoke from his pipe. I plan on taking Naruto to Uzushio. The third began to cough a bit, and was honestly surprised at what he had just heard. Whatever he was thinking she would say, that was not it. What for, if I may ask? His tone calm, but his mind working a mile a minute. Take it easy, Hiruzen. I just want to teach my son his heritage, along with Fuinjutsu. He narrowed his eyes a bit. And you can't teach him that here, inside of the village? He asked. Kushina knew the man cared about her and Naruto, and just wanted to keep them safe. No doubt them leaving the village would put them in danger, especially considering they were the last two Uzumakis, and both were very important to the village, her right now, and Naruto when a few years older.